Welcome back, everybody, to our podcast. My name is Bree.
And I'm Kelsey.
And before we actually get started into the episode, we have some news for you. So, as you know, Macabre Curiosity started off with Kelsey and I and our dearly lovable friend, Isaac. However,
I thought you were going to say dearly departed for a
I know,
minute.
it was fitting. Regardless, unfortunately, with everything going on, Isaac has decided that he can no longer participate in Macabre Curiosity, and he is going to focus on himself and his life. So we will wish him good luck. We love you. We will miss you. We hope to see your face soon, and we hope to hear your voice soon. Goodbye.
AKA, you better be listening to every single fucking episode, and you better be answering our text messages more, and I can't wait to see you.
Exactly. We love you.
Yeah.
So that leaves an empty spot for Macabre Curiosity, and we decided what better person to invite into our abode to talk shit about things than our lovely, gorgeous, and beauty-inspiring Joshua.
Hi everyone, I'm back.
He's back and never leaving. Boop, boop, boop.
Back again.
So, yay! Joshua's gonna be a permanent member. So, yes. Goodbye, Isaac. Farewell. We shall miss you. And hello, Joshua.
Hello everyone, I am so excited. You guys have no idea, I love this podcast. And I have been on the podcast before as a guest, and I feel so honored to be invited back as a permanent host.
Actually, I have a question about that, Joshua, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Technically, you are Macabre Curiosity's #1 fan.
Ah.
Right? You are Macabre's #1 fan. You have listened to every single one of our podcasts. You have commented on everything. You have shared ideas with us. How does it feel to now be part of it?
You sound like a game show host.
Right. I don't know, like, I really don't have much of a life, so it's easy for me to stand things.
Especially things created by your best friends, of course.
Exactly. So, I mean, I also love spooky shit and, you know,
This is
murder and goth stuff and skulls and shit. Which, by the way, is a great segue into our podcast. This episode, we are going to be discussing a couple of true crimes.
Oh my god, I love it when a man takes in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. So, yes, this is going to be our very first true crime episode. Da, 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 da. So, with that said, we do need to make some disclaimers. Of course, this podcast is not appropriate for children. If you're having children listen to this, shame on you. This is a mature podcast. There's lots of cursing, there's lots of swearing, there's lots of talks about things that your delicate little goblins should not be listening to. And because this is a true crime thing, the stuff that we will be discussing is real life. This is something that actually happened. These are people that actually died, and we're going to discuss it. Okay? Mature, not appropriate. Don't let kids listen. There's your disclaimer.
With that being said, we have decided for this episode that we will not be using the names of kids and spouses in this case because they are innocent, they are still alive, and we don't want anyone to send hate their way. So yeah, please don't be shitheads.
And it's not even like just hate, like, don't make them relive this. It's bad enough that they had to live it the first time. Let's not make them go through it again for random people's enjoyment.
Yeah.
Okay. So, true crime. It's a horrible thing when we live in a society where people just feel like being mean-spirited, or people who were born simply different with different brain chemicals put into them. So we will be discussing two particulars And I guess now the question is, should I go first with my choice, or do you guys want to go first with yours?
You can go first with yours because you technically
Yeah,
have the idea first.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, this is totally your idea.
Okay, so I came across this article on Reddit. Thank you, Reddit. And I came across an article about a man by the name of Thomas Donald Bruce McArthur.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
What a
I was a
mouthful.
I was a little shook when I saw how long his name was. So what drew my attention to this man is the picture that they used was a mall Santa with a bunch of kids on his laps, and I was like, oh
I'm
no.
already terrified.
I'm already scared. Like, this going to be about kids? Because on my own time, like, I like to find weird shit online.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even like I like to find it.
Ditto.
I just come across it. So, Bruce McArthur, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of his life. So, Bruce McArthur, he was born on October 8th, 1951 in Lindsay, Ontario. So, if you guys don't know, that's in Canada. He had sisters.
Is it pronounced Ontario or Ontario?
Listen, sister, I can barely pronounce most English words. I don't know.
I think it's Ontario. That's how
I
they
think
say it
that's
in
Ontario.
Degrassi. Degrassi's a Canadian show, so.
Okay, well, either way. So he was born over there in Lindsay, and from what I could find, they didn't really say how many sisters that he had. They just said that he had sisters. And his family his family also helped raise troubled youths on a farm. And they were also really super well known. The mother was an Irish Catholic. The father was a Scottish Presbyterian. Presbyterian, thank you. Mr. McArthur, he grew up as a teacher's pet. He won singing contests. But because his mother and his father had different religious views, they often got into fights, which McArthur would often side with his mom. And he felt that his father, like, kind of sensed his homosexuality. So he felt like his father was getting, like, more strict with him and whatnot. Then he went to Fenelon Falls Secondary School, and that's where he met his high school sweetheart. I'm not going to say her name. They both graduated in 1970. He graduated in general business and married his sweetheart at the age of 23. So then he began working for Eaton's department in 1973, which was a few blocks north from, what the heck was it called? I don't remember what it's called, but it was the first, like, one of the first gay villages that started developing in Toronto. And this one was found on Yonge Street between College and Wesley. So it was that whole area was starting to become a little gay village, because in 1969 is when same-sex sexual relations were decriminalized. So then people started, like, doing it more out in the open.
So basically you're saying that it was nice to stay at the YMCA. No, it's nice to stay at the YMCA.
Yeah, oh my god. Yes, so they started, creating this little village, and he happened to be around it. About mid-70s, his father was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and McArthur got a little upset because his mother started, getting romantically involved with another man, and he was like, that's some shit. So he started, like, hanging out with his dad, and him and his dad got really close. And then,
Mother, that is a sin.
His mom died in 1978 from cancer. His father died in 1981. 1979, he left Eton and started working as a traveling salesman for McGregor's Socks, which they were, like, super popular with Sears and whatnot. And then he even, like, worked his way up as a merchandising rep for Stanfield. He started having affairs in early 1990s. And then
Oh my God, that's like 40 years.
Yeah. So then, like, a little bit, like, past a year after that, he finally came out to his wife and said, hey, I'm gay, because all of his affairs were with male sex workers. And so he's like, yeah, I'm gay, but they still, like, stayed together for a while. And then 1993, his job stopped and they started having like financial troubles to the point where they had to like mortgage their home in 97 and they went bankrupt in 99. This also didn't help because their teenage son, they had like a son and a daughter. But their teenage son was obsessively making obscene phone calls to women he did not know. And this is a key information, so pay attention.
Oh.
So he separated from his wife in 97 and he moved into Toronto. He was actually in an apartment on Don Millis Road, which is a couple blocks away from the Church and Wesley streets. So
Okay.
he lived pretty close to the gay village that was being developed. When, let's see, he was in a 4-year relationship with a man. They didn't say who. And then when everything was finalized in his divorce, and then he actually got, like, him and the man he was with, they broke up, he went to psychiatrist and was prescribed Prozac for several months as he was trying to get work as a landscaper. Okay, so that's his history. Now let's move on to the nitty gritty. So his first, I can't say murder because it wasn't a murder, it was an assault. His first assault was on October 31st, 2001. And he met this sex worker on a chat line. They had sex, and the sex worker was thinking like they were in a relationship or whatnot, I think. And so he like wanted to go over and show off his Halloween costume, and so he was just like, yeah, everything's great. He went over to McArthur's house, and then all of a sudden, like, McArthur just picked up an iron pipe and just started smashing this dude's head.
Oh my God.
And like he struck him several times in the back of the head. He like fucked up his hands and left the dude unconscious. And the guy woke up, called 911, and McArthur turned himself in, and he's like, yeah, I have no idea. Like, I don't remember this. I don't remember, like, I don't know why. I just know it happened. I don't know. And so, like, the victim, like, he never pressed charges because he was too traumatized, which I understand. You know, you just all of a sudden got bludgeoned almost to death with an iron fucking pipe. Like, what the fuck is this, Clue?
Yeah.
But he got pleaded guilty to assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm. On April 11th, 2003, he received a conditional sentence of 729 days. So he was not allowed to have guns. So he was supposed to go to jail. Like, the lawyer was like, hey, this dude, like, really needs to go to jail. Like, there's something really wrong. But, like, everybody was like, nah, he probably won't do it again. He's low risk. Who cares? So he ended up spending a year under house arrest, followed by 6 months curfew, and then a 3-year probation. So he basically got away with everything. And they were like trying to figure out like, why did he do this? And they're like, well, it could be because he was mixing his anti-seizure meds with amyl nitrate. Do you guys know what that is?
No clue.
Apparently, it's what they call on the streets poppers, and it's a muscle relaxant that is sometimes used recreationally for sexual purposes.
I changed my answer. I do know what poppers are.
Yeah, I know what poppers are.
Yeah, so apparently that's what it was called. So he was also banned from the Church and Wesley streets, except for like work and medical appointments, and he was supposed to stay 33 feet away from the victim's home and work. And he was not allowed to bring in any more sex workers, and he was not allowed to purchase, possess, or consume drugs unless he had a medical prescription for them. And he had to submit DNA, and he was compelled to undertake psychological and psychiatric counseling, including anger management. But because of all of this and the whole thing of he's probably not going to do it again and everything, they expunged that assault from his record.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
They do this every time.
Every time. So they were, they basically like, the criminal justice lawyer, he was like, hey, like, this is really weird. Like, there's no real way to make sure that he stays on what he's supposed to be doing. I honestly think he needs to go to jail. And, like, this former, what was it, homicide detective noted, like, there's no real way to enforce these policies that we're making him follow, especially if we're not making this public that, you know, he's in trouble for this. Like, there's no real way to make sure that he doesn't actually recommit. But, like, the judge is like, oh, well, you know, it was against sex workers, so who cares? And, yeah, they struck it from his record. So, in 2002, while the assault case was still going on, he signed up for, are you ready for this? Recon, Silver Daddy, Man Jam, Grinder, Bear 411, Bear Force, Scruff, Daddy Hunt, Squirt, and Growler.
That's a lot.
Damn.
So the first one that he signed up was for Recon. Joshua, do you know this?
I have no idea what Recon is.
Okay. So Recon is supposed to be a gay fetish site where guys can go on there looking for BDSM and fetishized moments. He signed up there looking for submissive men. And because of all of this, he was starting to become well known for BDSM play and rough sex, like super rough sex. He joined Facebook in 2011 and cataloged his nightlife with parties, vacations, birthday dinners, and concerts. And in all of his in all of his pictures and whatnot that he posted, he always had younger men of South Asian or Middle Eastern descent in all of his pictures.
So there's fetishizing and then there's fetishizing.
Uh-huh. So around this time, that's when he started to like really become a presence in the gay village over in Toronto. And he started becoming a regular at the bars. 2007, 2008, he lived in a 19th floor apartment at Leaside's Tower in Thorncliffe Park, which is a area that was populated with immigrants and was about 3 miles away from Church, like Church Street. He was like, everybody knew pretty much that he was supposed to be banned from Church and Wesley streets, but there was not a lot that they can do about it. And there was an incident in 2011 where McArthur told an acquaintance about this moment where he was asked to leave a coffee shop, and because he got asked to leave the coffee shop, he literally like swept his arms across the counter and broke every glass that was on the counter because he got asked to leave.
So we're seeing a pattern of violent tendency.
Uh-huh. And so the acquaintance, he was like, hey, you know, I've actually heard a lot of bad things about you. And after that story, like, I don't feel comfortable being around you. I don't think this is going to work. And like McArthur, like, got super pissed. And like, apparently he turned red and started screaming like, oh no, I gotta bleep this out. Fucking telling stories about me like that. You fucking little bitches. And you're just like the rest of them. You think I'm crazy. And then like him and the acquaintance like never talked again. There was also another moment where a Toronto restaurant owner asked McArthur, who was a regular at that time, he was like, hey, what happened to your boyfriend? And like McArthur got really mad and he's like, he's on vacation, and then left the restaurant and never came back. There's hints, there's clues, we know what's gonna happen.
Like a serial killer Karen. Like, Jesus Christ.
For real, right?
Seriously.
So because he, you know, he's single, he doesn't really have anything going, like he doesn't really have work going on. He was trying to get work as a like landscaper, and he finally got something done. So he had a business called Artistic Designs. People noted that he usually worked out of a van with like these little gardening tools, and they always like pictured him more as the gardener. And there was always like this older white gentleman that was with him that they seemed like they were in like romantically involved. And then he always had like a day worker with him too. And so he was building up his clientele list with his witty charm and everything. And he was, you know, working for a bunch of like the wealthy elites in Toronto. landscaping their yards and stuff. And the thing that, like, kind of, like, blew me away is, like, despite the fact, like, all of those temper tantrum stuff that I just read off to you, like, a lot of people swear up and down that he was the nicest man that they've ever met.
Huh.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah.
So,
Abusers honestly often are.
yeah. And then, here's the other thing. So, on the off seasons for the landscaping, he also worked as a mall Santa. I don't remember the specific mall, but he worked as a mall Santa. So, going back to the son, there's a moment here that you guys are probably going to find interesting. So, McArthur's divorce with his wife was initially, like, pretty heated, but then they kind of, like, made up and they were, like, kind of on good terms. And if you remember, the son who was obsessively calling unknown women making obscene phone calls, he actually ended up going to jail for it. He served 14 months in jail for making these phone calls. And then was ordered to go live with his dad to help with landscaping. Well, a friend of the son decided to visit over at McArthur's place, and he found the bathroom decorated with photos of naked men with erections all over the walls. And he told the son about it, and the son's like, yeah, I know. Apparently my dad knows all of those guys.
Interesting decor choice.
I mean, it's not the worst bathroom I can imagine.
It just sounds like that gay club we went to, and honestly.
Right? Okay, so now there has been some disappearances of men. What started the actual investigations was 3 men disappearing. So the TPS, which is Toronto's police services or something, I can't remember the actual, it was the police for Toronto. They started Project Houston, and Project Houston's point was to try to find, like, where these missing people were. So they lasted 18 months, and that started up in November 2012. And they were looking first into the disappearance on September 6, 2010 of, oh no, Skandaraj Navarantam.
Maybe we should say victim number 1.
Listen, I'm terrible with names as
Oh,
is.
that's victim number 3.
Yeah, so we're
Skandaraj.
gonna call him Skanda.
So sorry for anybody of that.
I'm really
culture.
sorry. I'm really not trying to be rude. I'm really not. I'm just really terrible at reading things out loud. I'm so sorry.
It's
But anyway, so they were trying to look for this dude. Couldn't find him. They believed that he was murdered, but there was no evidence for it. And they were looking and looking and looking. They couldn't find anything. They did have a tip, and this is what started the project actually being, like, ongoing. They found a tip off of a cannibal website that I am refusing to say what it is, in 2012, of a man that claimed to have kidnapped and murdered somebody and then ate him. So they started it up with that.
Why does this always turn to cannibalism?
I don't know.
Someone please explain.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But anyway, so they were looking into that. They couldn't really find anything, but they did have a suspect. So they labeled him with the code name of Suspect Zero. He was actually ended up being cleared in 2013 for the murders, but they found out that he was guilty of possessing, making, and distributing child porn.
Ew.
Of course.
Yep. And you know how old this dude is? 69.
He's 69 now?
No, he was 69 when he got caught.
Oh, I thought he was 66.
No. This is the Suspect Zero, not McArthur.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Suspect Zero was 69, but they did notice that he had a lot in common with McArthur.
Yeah.
So that's when they were just like, hey. But they also found out that Suspect Zero had entered into a cannibalistic sexual contract with a teenager from Colorado.
What
Ew,
cannibal
what?
contract?
Yeah.
Like, one of them agreed to eat the other person, and the person being eaten was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
I mean, I heard of one case before that, but like, ew, he's a teenager. He can't consent, and ew,
Uh-huh. And this was back in 2013,
gross.
right?
Wow.
Don't
So
do that.
then, June 2013, two other missing person cases were found to be tied to the Mr. Skanda. And that was linked by geography and lifestyle. So and they went missing between 2010 and 2012.
Hmm.
Both led a double life. So they were both married, but they were both like, weren't out of the closet yet. So they were like living their married life, and then they'd go live their gay life in secret. Um, and they found that McArthur knew both of them.
What a coinkadink.
Yes, but here's the thing. So they actually talked to McArthur not as a suspect, but as a witness. Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And the only reason why they did that is because there was anonymous tip led the police to investigate McArthur on November 11th, 2013, which they found out that Skanda used to actually work for McArthur for his landscaping business, and that was the one that he was in the relationship with on and off. And
Mhm.
then like the other one I guess he employed as well. But they still don't really know what happened, and they ended up shutting down Project Houston.
Well, they worked so long and hard.
Yes,
Useless.
they did. They did. They worked hard. So then, some more people started going missing. And here's the part that actually kind of annoyed me. And I could just be reading into it wrong. I don't know. This is just what I'm found. But then they decided to start Project Prism. And Project Prism was started because they were looking for one specific man. And I don't know if I want to read his name. But
Well,
anyway, it
Edit
turns
and
out
post.
that most of the people that were missing were of the South Asian, Middle Eastern descent, except for
What
this
a
one dude,
coincidence.
which led to the creation of Project Prism, and he turned out to be white. So,
Sounds about right.
created in 2017 to find two missing men from the gay village in Toronto, a list was made and shared from the Missing Rainbow community, which was a Facebook community that was run by some of the gay, God, how do I say that? It was run by some of the villagers from the gay village, and they were trying to find this victim along with everybody else. And they had a list of like, I think it was like 17 people where they were like, have you seen these guys? And they were like super active in this community. Like their community had 600 people in it. And they were always like keeping tabs, trying to figure out like where everybody was. And they even like made this list of like, hey, if you're going to date online, this is what you need to look for. This is what you need to pay attention to. Try to be safe. And they were always like, just always making sure everybody was safe because the police weren't really helping.
Of course.
And then the Missing Rainbow community, like they were trying to share this information with the police, and the police was like, yeah, no, nothing's going on. We don't see a connection between these guys, and we don't think there's a serial killer out there. But oh my God, 3 of those guys off the list is the same people that Project Houston was trying to find. Wow. No, there's no connection. How fucking ridiculous is that? So they were still trying to figure it out, but they weren't seeing any connection with anything. So they were just like, well, we don't really know what's going on. Then, they were like scouring the land for these guys. Like they were looking in the banks, they were looking by the rivers, they were looking in the forest. They were just looking, couldn't find anything. They found a couple bodies. I think, what was it? One of them was a body that was found by her mother in an alleyway 4 days after she was reported missing. And then the next day, the police found another body of a homeless transgender woman, and she was discovered on a ravine in August. But still, they were still saying that there was no evidence of a serial killer. So they brought in this detective. His name was Detective Sergeant Hank I'm not even gonna try with his last name. And they brought him on and they're like, hey, look, you know, like, we got this, but we don't really know what's going on. So good luck. And he's like, well, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? But then, they found a crucial piece of evidence that was reported within 72 hours. Now, according to this, they found out that on, I'm just going to say his last name, Kinsman, and this is the white man that they started Project Prism for. They found on Kinsman calendar on June 26 the name Bruce. And June 26 was the last day that he was seen. This man was supposed to be super popular. He was super active, especially on social life and everything. But on June 26th, everything shut down. So they started looking into it, trying to figure out who this Bruce guy was and where did he go. And they found that Kinsman went into this red vehicle. Couldn't figure out who it was because it was, I guess, kind of blurred and whatnot. They didn't have a picture of the driver's license. Not the driver's license. They didn't have a picture of the license plate and they didn't have a picture of the driver. But they did find out that it was a 2004 Dodge Caravan. Oh no, I forgot to add that. Shit.
What?
Well, okay. While in 2002 with the assault case and everything, McArthur ended up buying a 2004 Dodge Caravan that was red. Anyway, so they found out that it was a Dodge Caravan. They were trying to find the car. They actually found the car in a like a dump almost, and they found traces of blood in there. And they're like, well, who owned this car before? And then they found out it was like Bruce McArthur. And they're like, oh shit, okay, we need to go figure this out. So they started like keeping tabs on McArthur and they were like watching him and they're like, okay, listen, like if somebody goes in there alone with him, like we need to go. Like we need to frickin' go. So January 18th, 2018, they found a man by himself going into McArthur's apartment. They're like, this is it. It's here. We gotta go. We gotta go in. They fucking barreled in and found the poor sex worker tied to McArthur's bed, his face taped, and a black plastic bag over his head.
Jesus Christ.
And I don't know if they found McArthur, but they only referred to him as John. He was an immigrant and whatnot, and he met McArthur through Growler. And apparently this was not their first time meeting up. And I guess, you know, McArthur wanted to spice things up and he handcuffed him to the bed. And then that's when he, you know, put the black bag over his head and was about to frickin' murder him. They think he was going to murder him because when they went through his computer, they found 9 folders on his computer, and each folder had information and pictures of the first 8 victims, with the 9th folder titled with John's name on it, but empty. And that's when they started to like get all the evidence together. They started finding all sorts of pictures, and I think they found hair and everything too. And it was over like 5 cell phones, 5 computers, 3 digital cameras, and about a dozen USB flash drives. And they were like, well, okay, this is enough to get them in. Like, we don't even need bodies. Like, this is enough. There's pictures of these guys.
That's definitely more than circumstantial evidence,
yeah,
for sure.
And like, I guess some of the pictures, like he posed them in like fur coats with cigars and stuff, and like some of them even had like, they noticed like the eyes were taped open, and
Ew, what the fuck?
they had like BDSM gear, and they were like hog-tied in what they called the kill position, which I did not want to look up. That's one thing I just really did not want to know. So there was so much evidence on it, but they were like, okay, so where are the bodies then? And they're like, well, he owns a landscaping business.
Oh my god, no.
What if it's got something to do with that? Because he was also like working out contracts where he would like store his stuff on somebody's property in exchange for him cleaning in doing their yards. So they took some dogs out and they started going through like all of the places that McArthur worked. And they noticed that the dogs were taking strong interests in the large planter boxes that were in people's yards. So the planters were frozen to the ground, so they had to like heat up the ground in order to dig up the planters. And then I think they got like over a dozen of them. And they started like thawing them out and they x-rayed them. They're like, hey, there's something in here. Like, we need to like check this out. They open it up. Sure as shit. Dismembered bodies in the planters.
Oh,
On these rich women's yards.
this is where I thought it was going.
Uh-huh. And what was it? January 29th, the police announced that they found a dismembered skeletal remains of at least 3 people in 2 of the 12 large planter boxes. And this was at one residence.
Oh.
So they started, like counting it out, and it turns out there was like 8 of them, 8 bodies that they found. And that's when it got labeled as like the largest investigation that Toronto has ever undertaken. Because did you guys know that Toronto, I think in over that year or something, they only had like 236 like murder cases throughout the entire country? Let me put that into perspective for you. That same amount of time, Ohio had 267.
Oh, Canada.
Like, they don't have that many, like, murders and stuff because they only have one person that's, like, the forensic anthropologist, I guess, if I'm remembering. Yeah, forensic anthropologist. They only have one person because of how little that they have to deal with. So,
imagine not living in a homicidal country.
Oh, right. Wouldn't that be nice? But they started like pulling in a bunch of evidence and everything, but this took like a while. And then a lot of the people from the gay village were like, well, why did it take so long? Like, he's been tied to a bunch of things. Like, why did it take so long to tie him to it?
Knew that he was a creep.
Yeah, and it turns out that a lot of his first previous assault cases, like not just that first one that I read off, but there was like 2 or 3 where they got expunged off of his record. Or he was like being investigated like separately, and the people that were investigating him separately didn't tell the Project Prism like what they found. So they never really tied him in until that poor sex worker walked in and almost died.
That is crazy.
Right? So he is technically in jail right now for 8 counts of murder. And apparently by the time he reaches the age 91 is when he can request parole, I guess is what it is. Yeah. So yeah, that's Bruce McArthur.
What a lovely fellow.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot more to it, but like my eyes started to hurt.
Oh yeah, like there's from what I saw, there's ties to they think that he might be involved with a bunch of missing people's murder shit in the 70s that happened in that same area before it was the gay village, when it was just like a street block or whatever. So
Yeah, so they're actually opening up a ton of old cases from it because they're like, well, something must have happened. But because so much was being like removed from his records, like it was hard for them to like originally tie it in. So they had to like think outside the box in order to try to tie him. So as far as I know, they're still possibly tying him to like a shit ton of other cases.
Yeah.
But people are thinking, especially from the gay village, they're thinking that because most of the victims were homeless, gay, immigrants, or, South Asian or Middle Eastern descent, like, the police didn't take them serious. And they didn't care.
And some of them being sex workers and shit.
Yeah, so that they're like, well, why is this any different? Like, why are we different? And so they brought up a bunch of issues, but at least he was caught. Now, I mean,
at least he was caught, but I still consider it like a fucking failure on their part.
Yeah, so he was, what was it? He got caught in 2018. 2018. From the 70s till 2018, this man was running free.
Kind of like the Golden State Killer dude.
Yep.
Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're honestly like they're starting to compare him to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was gonna say when you were talking about the pictures thing, I was like, that's very Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
Ugh. And BTK,
Yeah.
honestly.
Because they were using the whole LGBTQ community and how little care that they received from
And
police
Gacy.
officers, and you know, he was also going after sex workers and people who won't be missed if they go missing.
There is a really long history of cops ignoring queer murders.
Yeah.
Just historically speaking, like they do not care about us.
Yeah.
Especially
yeah.
during that time period in like the 60s and 70s with like after Stonewall and shit, like they were just focused on arresting us all the time and letting us be hate crime the shit out of, like
And just
they're not
honestly hate criming us.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wow. It's just it was incredible. Like when I was reading this the first time, I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? Like, holy shit.
So we just finished talking about one of Canada's most prolific killers. Now we want to talk about Herb Baumeister, a name you might not have heard of, but he is suspected of being one of America's most prolific killers.
Yep. Something about 11 to maybe 21 victims.
Holy
But
shit.
Yeah.
Better known. But it's actually suspected that there might be as many as 80 to 90 victims.
Oh, that's right.
What?
This is 970 shit.
Uh-huh. So Herb Baumeister is guilty of at least all of the murders that he committed on his property, but he's also suspected of being the I-70 murderer and also possibly the Ohio State killer.
Yep. He was a busy boy, allegedly.
Kelsey, do you want to tell us about when he was born in his early childhood?
Of course. So Herb Baumeister was born on April 7th, 1947 in Indianapolis, Indiana. And he was the oldest of 4 children. And his childhood was reportedly normal until about like his early teen to teen years when he began like showing antisocial behavior.
And when we say antisocial behavior, we mean like being obsessed with playing with dead things, pondering or requesting to sample urine from his friends, and also urinating on a teacher's desk.
Yeah, he would, we're not talking about like introverts or anything like that. We're talking like really weird, creepy shit, like Joshua said, playing with dead animals, peeing on people's desks. Later as an adult, he would like send like a urine-soaked note to a governor. Like he had a weird pee thing. You do, dude, I guess. But
yeah. The pee thing isn't so much the problem. It's just like it's an example of odd behavior.
It was a problem because nobody consented to that. If somebody had consented,
definitely, for sure. I just mean like if there are listeners who do have a pee fetish, I'm not saying that that's not, like it's you do you, boo. I do not care.
Just as long as it's consensual, that's the only
Exactly. And sending a pee-soaked urine letter to a governor is, in fact, not consensual.
Yes. So, when he reached his teens, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was suspected of having multiple personalities, but did not receive treatment for that. Gotta love, that era. These disorders would become more apparent as he got older. He ended up going to college for 1 year at Indiana State University, where he met his wife. The two were drawn to one another because they were both like 2 of the few conservatives on campus, because that was like in the time of the peace and love era, and there was like hippies everywhere and shit, which we love that. But
and
they
bonded over. It's no surprise that a serial killer wouldn't be into peace and love.
Yeah, exactly. They would marry in November of 1971, but only 6 months afterwards, Herb would be committed to a psychiatric institute where he spent 2 months. It doesn't.
So, red flag number 1008.
Exactly. Over the next several years, they had 3 children: a daughter in 1979, a son in 1981, and then another daughter in 1984. Like we said earlier in the episode, we are not going to be giving names to any of his kids or his wife because they are still living. So I'm not telling you. Like, if you want to find out, you can look for yourself, but I think you should just leave them alone. So that's that on that. In 1974, he began working for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and displayed symptoms of schizophrenia again. They have listed on here, I have like an old article too, they have listed on here that one of his signs of mental illness was dressing as drag in a Christmas card. That's not a sign of a mental illness. If you
That's
see
some
that anywhere about
bullshit.
this, no, it's not. Not a mental illness thing. Like that's something
Yes.
people do. Like
Excuse
fuck off.
you.
However, it should be noted that it is particularly disturbing following who his victims are going to.
Yeah, that's true. But dressing in drag's not bad. Like don't. He would work his way up to be program director, but would later be terminated in 1985 when he, like I said earlier, urinated on a letter which was sent to then governor of Indiana, Robert D. Orr, who was a Republican. So I don't feel too bad for him. But don't do that. That's gross. It was also the same year that the body of Eric, I can't pronounce his last name, a 17-year-old white male, was discovered in Indiana, and he may or may not have been Herb's first victim.
We don't know, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. On September 3rd, 1985, he committed a hit and run while intoxicated, though he received no severe punishment. Shocking. A white man, apparently straight, not receiving punishment for something. Not surprised by it.
Wow.
And then less than 1 year after that, he would be in 1986. He would be charged with auto theft and conspiracy to commit that,
What the fuck?
avoiding implications of his actions a second time and beating the charges against him. Wow!
A shining
Once again,
beacon in his community.
I'm so shocked.
white privilege isn't real, guys. In 1988, his mom would loan him $4,000 to open up a thrift store called Save-A-Lot, which would make him $50,000 in its first year alone, allowing for a second location. In 1991, Save-A-Lot was so successful, Herb, his wife, and their 3 children were able to move to Fox Hollow Farm, an 18-acre, $1 million estate in the prestigious Westfield district, a suburb of Indianapolis. And that's kind of how I heard about him, by the way. So I heard about him in a weird way. Like, Bree, you heard about Bruce McArthur on Reddit. I heard about Herb Baumeister on a YouTube drama channel. The person who did it was Peter Mon, and apparently in the 90s, he lived in that area, and he used to frequent one of the gay bars, I think it was called OP's or Our Place, where Herb would go and meet these people, and he apparently might have ran into him on one of his blackout nights, and he also has a video on another channel of his where they, like, take his camera inside and they explore the actual Fox Hollow Farm.
Oh,
So if you want to watch that, you can. But that's how I found out about him, because of his fucking massive-ass mansion and shit. But he was seen as a pillar in the community. The town recognized Herb as a family man. Is it Herb or Herb? Am I saying it wrong?
I honestly don't know.
I think it's pronounced herb because I think herbs are the plants.
Well, also,
Well,
like, in different, like, countries and shit, like, they pronounce, like, herbs like herbs.
Whatever. He's... I don't care.
Anyway.
The town recognized Herb as a family man and a charitable entrepreneur. He owned a popular business that had recently become a small chain and a dream home complete with a pool house which included a wet bar. This area was decorated lavishly and filled with mannequins dressed by Baumeister to appear as if they were guests attending an upscale pool party. That's not creepy at all, just having, like, random fucking mannequins hanging out in your fucking pool area just because you don't have friends, I guess. I don't know.
Because they be watching you.
I've always felt like mannequins gave me the creeps, honestly.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Their soulless eyes looking into me.
Sometimes they don't even have eyes.
That's what my point is.
Herb, eventually he'd begin to frequent the local gay bars in the area in search of potential victims to lure back to his pool house. He would pose as, like, an autoerotic asphyxiation fetishist, which is somebody who receives pleasure from choking, being choked, or having air cut off, usually during intercourse or masturbation, which, once again, it's totally cool if you're down with that as long as you're safe about it and it's consensual. No kink shame on this podcast, okay? Just, this one is a very dangerous one, so just be safe when you do it. So yeah, he would pose as that when he would go to the bars, and he would get these men to go back with him to his little mansion, and he would make sure they were intoxicated, invite them in the pool, and strangle them to death with the pool hose. And that pool hose apparently is still in the house. It's still
Hold
there.
on. How is it still there if it's like been used in the actual
I
crime?
don't know. That's just what the homeowners say. So I'm just like, that's why I said supposedly.
I wonder if they got it back and they use it as like a little like token thing.
They keep it hidden in the back pool room. I don't know. That's what they say
Why
allegedly. I
would
don't
you
know if it's
keep
true.
it?
I don't know. I don't know. People are weird. Um, but yeah, he would do that, and their remains would be discarded in the woods behind his home. And reports of missing gay men in the area began piling up, and bodies continued to be discovered throughout Indiana and Ohio. Unfortunately, at this time, of course, police did not put much effort into investigating the murders and disappearances of the gay men because they're gay, and a lot of them had a history of sex work. And we all know how police feel about sex workers and people of the LGBT community. Just gonna leave that there. Take what you will of
In
that.
case, sorry, in case anyone was wondering, this podcast is very pro-sex work, pro-queer, not so much pro-cop.
Yeah, pretty much. So, but most of the investigators and members of the community believed the ones who had gone missing decided to run off to a big city where they would be more widely accepted by society without informing their families. Which, I mean, I guess that does happen, or it did happen like a lot back in the day. But Indianapolis is a big fucking city, so I don't really understand that. And usually, somebody would tell their family member if they were like, say, moving to New York or San Francisco or something. But whatever, we don't want to put effort into finding missing queer people. Like that's too much empathy and caring.
I just want to add a little caveat saying that we have to remember this was in the era of the Matthew Shepard killing.
Yeah.
And before Matthew Shepard, pretty much gay deaths and gay murders were swept under the carpet. It was only because of the severity and the cruelty in the conditions under which Matthew Shepard died that the country really started paying attention to hate crimes that were committed specifically against queer people.
Yeah. And don't they still not really have LGBT protections in the state where he died, in Wyoming or whatever? Isn't that something they're still fighting for?
You know, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty positive that protection under the law for gay people, like in the category of a hate crime, I don't think that that's a federal thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Gotta love people.
I hate it. I hate people. Finally, law enforcement began to connect the dots and then 1992 received their first tip from a man. I'm not going to say his name because...
We're just going to call him Mr. M.
Yeah. Well,
Man.
Mr. M. Mr. M called the Indianapolis police and claimed a gay bar patron by the name of Brian Smart had murdered his friend and tried to kill him as well. Unable to locate a Brian Smart, the killings continued. In 1994, life took kind of a downward spiral for Herb. His business, which had been like flourishing before, began to fail, and they think it could have been caused by like his vastly like superior attitude and his fucking ego that he began to display toward his employees.
So I just wanted to add that Mr. M would still receive phone calls up until pretty much the end from Herb, saying weird things to him like, I had a satisfying night tonight, or something to that, like alluding to the fact that he had a successful night, which to him meant, unfortunately, murdering people. So that's terrifying.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
He was... So, but yeah, he was starting to show like an ego and a vastly superior attitude towards his employees, which was, they think, had been causing his business to start to fail. He was also like starting to drink more and was arrested for drinking and driving in Rochester, Indiana, which earned him 3 days in jail and 1 year of probation. Then,
He also was displaying like things that weren't particularly like common for his behavior, according to some people that he worked with. Saying things like he started to become more vain and had started dyeing his hair to cover up the grays.
Which, I mean, I feel like that's not strange in and of itself. You know, people get a little bit self-conscious about their age. That's understandable. But if, you know, it was out of his character, it could be a sign that, you know, his ego was getting and growing, and he wanted to, I don't know, maybe present himself in that way.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. To make things way worse, his son, who was 13 at the time, would find a human skull on their property while walking through the woods behind their house. And he would show it to his mom, who asked her about the fucking skull, like, why is there a skull in our backyard? This is weird. And his answer was that it had come from a medical skeleton belonging to his deceased father, which he had acquired many throughout his career as, like, an anesthesiologist, I think is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Although there were problems at this time, like in his relationship with his wife, surprisingly, for some reason, this was not one of them. She would go back and look for the remains, like I think a week or two later, and didn't find them, and assumed that they had been carried off either by her husband or by a wild animal, and just moved on with her life. Like, it wasn't a big deal. And here's my thing, like, I think that's a little
In the words of
weird.
Whoopi Goldberg, you in danger, girl.
Yeah, like, I thought it was a little weird that she, you know, she's innocent. I'm not gonna say it.
I mean, there is something to be said about cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that too. Like, I don't want to assume that she was just like, I don't care about this. Like, it could have been like, she could have fully believed his explanation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, I was just thinking that. It's like, if she waited a week, she was probably either, like, fighting it, because if she would have believed her husband, she wouldn't have gone out there anyway. If she had any, like, real reason to doubt her husband, like a real sickening fear, she would have been out there less than a week, like 2 to 3 days she would have been out looking for it. But the fact that she waited a week, I wonder if something happened at the house that made her, like, second guess everything.
Well, and here's the thing, though. When you're in a relationship with an abuser, which I think we've pretty much established Herb was in every respect of the word, I feel.
Even though she says that, like, he wasn't like that.
Yeah, but abusers, and especially, you know, sociopaths, narcissists, serial killers, they have a way of gaslighting the people in their life to believe whatever reality they tell them to be acceptable and to be true.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
So, and I'm not saying that it, like, she's completely without fault. I'm not in her head. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea of knowing what she was thinking or what was going through her mind. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, he had mentally manipulated her over all of these years that they were together to just simply accept whatever he said as the truth.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not in her head. We are not in her head, and nor are we experts. So it is not our room nor place to judge. We don't know. We are just saying what we found.
We are just making assumptions.
Yes. Which makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also fun to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're not making assumptions. We're just speculating. How about
There
that?
we go. That's a better word.
Yeah, these are just speculations and ideas.
Nobody's being attacked. I'm not attacking her.
No.
I just thought it was weird.
It is odd, isn't it? It is odd.
Yes, it is very odd.
Well, I find the timing odd. Like, the whole going out and looking, like, I can see that happening. You know, like, that's a good chance of somebody doing that in that situation. But it's the timing where it's like, I wonder if something happened. Especially if it, like, his ego was getting way worse over time. Like, it was getting more and more inflated. Like, I wonder if something happened. Because that's not like well, maybe something's going on, but I'm going to believe him. That's like okay, I'll believe you. Wait, what the fuck did you just do? That's what that feels like.
What if he was doing, like, the whole egomaniac psycho thing outside of the home, but, like, in the house he was, like, perfect dad?
Well, hold on. What is the time frame of all this? I don't remember if anybody said any times.
I've just been given years because it's kind of been spaced out.
So,
like, he was kind of spacing out his killings were, like, pretty, like, they weren't super far spaced out like Bruce McArthur, but it was, like, it was the early 90s.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm getting into 1995, and we started, I think, in 1993, 94.
Yeah. Oh, we did forget to mention that the thrift store actually turned into a chain of thrift stores.
Oh, you know, I
And this
talked
is
about how it turned into 2 stores.
okay.
Yeah.
And that would give him the excuse to travel.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why we don't really know the specific timeline, because there's not really a way to know how often he killed.
Yeah.
Because the only bodies that can be confirmed are the ones that were found
Yep.
on his property.
So in 1995, Mr. M had another run-in with the Brian Smart guy at a local gay bar, and this time he got a license plate number. Police would run the plates and learned that Brian Smart was an alias of Herb Baumeister. When police arrived at the Baumeister home and asked to search the property without a warrant, both Herb and refused. Herb told his wife he was being falsely accused of theft and ordered her not to allow the police onto property. One day, the investigators were able to speak to alone and explain why they were really there, that her husband was suspected of multiple murders. And even after learning this and knowing that a human skull had been lying in the woods on their property, she remained unwilling to have them search their place. And she didn't tell them right away that she had found the skull. But it's not in this article, but like that's something.
No,
Yeah.
she told her lawyer about the skull,
Yeah.
and the lawyer kind of left a hint to the police because legally he wasn't allowed to say anything.
Yeah, but she didn't tell like the police or anything about it. I would, if like
No.
I was being, my husband was being accused,
Guys,
like I think, if I wasn't like as maybe manipulated as she was,
guys,
I think that would be the first thing I would tell them.
guys.
But that's just
My
Yes,
dog's
that
please?
shows how fucking gaslit and manipulative she must have been by him, which is kind of scary when you think about it.
Or just willfully oblivious. We'll never know.
Yeah. However, Herb's luck began to run out, and his mood swings and odd behavior reached a climax and even began to disturb his wife. In 1996, both of Herb's stores shut down, and he became depressed, even threatening to take his own life. His wife was filing for divorce and suing for sole custody of their 3 children. When she finally contacted the police and agreed to allow them to do a full search of the property, Herb was on vacation, and he had taken their son. So that...
Without letting her know.
Are
Yeah.
you serious?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had a habit of leaving without telling her for like days, apparently. That's something that's not in this article, but...
But this was, I guess, the final straw that made her snap.
So, during the initial search, which lasted a few days, law enforcement would recover 5,500 bones, bone fragments, and teeth from 4 different victims in the wooded area of Fox Hollow Farm. Many of the remains had been concealed beneath piles of leaves and garbage, and a second search was prompted by Baumeister's neighbor, who informed police he had discovered skeletal remains near a drainage pipe separating the 2 properties. There was also like I'm not seeing it in here, but there was also like a burn pile too. So like some of them were just like, I guess, buried or whatever, and then others were like dismembered and burned. So that's
There's always
gross.
dismembering in these stories.
And which this article didn't say it. But in school, he was studying anatomy, which is the normal thing to study. But like when you find out that somebody like is a serial killer and is dismembering people, the fact that they like majored in anatomy in college is a little, I don't know. I thought it was a little, but gross. When the police arrived, they immediately noticed several somewhat intact skeletons protruding from the ground, from the area where the neighbor called them about. And they found in that area 140 more bones, including several intact rib cages and vertebrae from 7 additional bodies, which were found in this location, along with many cans of Miller Genuine Draft, which was Mr. Baumeister's favorite drink. In all, 11 bodies would be found, but only 8 could be identified. And that was Johnny Bayer, who was 20, Alan Wayne Broussard, which is 28, Roger A. Goodlett, 33, Richard Hamilton, 20, Stephen Hale, 26, Jeff Allen Jones, 31, Michael Kieran, 46, and Manuel Resendez, sorry if I say that wrong, who was 31. While Eric Rodinger, the person that I talked about earlier, was never confirmed as one of Herb's victims, Baumeister is expected to have killed more men who fit the profile and were dumped along rural roadsides throughout Indiana and Ohio during his more active years. According to his wife, Herb took 100 or more trips to Ohio on store business. There would have been plenty of time for Herb to commit these murders that took place on the property undisturbed. Usually during the summer, sometimes for several months at a time, his wife and kids would go out of town to stay with Herb's mom. So he not only could he go out of town on business and do this shit and bring it back to the property or whatever, his wife would leave for weeks at a time or something, or she would leave for the weekend and take the kids with her, and that's when he would peruse the gay bars and bring people home. Sorry, it's just really sad. It makes
It's
me sad
really,
about it.
it's really sad in the way that it was methodical.
Yeah.
It's like none of these were even like spontaneous. Like he had a plan for each time.
Yeah. So.
And it was almost like not even planned, but like calendared.
Yeah. And it gets worse. While searching the farm, police discovered a video camera hiding in a corner of the pool house where Herb had committed the multiple murders, but despite no tapes being found, police believe this camera was used to record the death of his victims. While he was still away on vacation, he contacted his older brother and claimed he was on a business trip and needed money immediately. And he called his brother a second time a few days later to request more money, but by that time, his brother had caught wind that corpses were being discovered on the property, and his brother informed the police where Herb was, sorry, I read that wrong. Herb's brother informed him that the police wanted to have a chat regarding all the bodies uncovered on the farm. Running out of options, he escaped to Canada, and one evening while sleeping in his car under a bridge, a Canadian trooper approached him, and Baumeister told the trooper he was a tourist who was just passing through and had just stopped to get rest. And the trooper noted that there was a large stack of what appeared to be videotapes in the backseat of his car.
Yeah.
And the next day, but he let him go.
Of course he did.
Of course. The next day on July 3rd, 1996, Herb Baumeister killed himself with a shot to the head from a .357 Magnum in Pinery Provincial Park, Grand Bend, Ontario, Canada. He had left a 3-page suicide note on yellow notepaper giving his reasons for the suicide, a failed marriage and business. And he made note of the fact that he had originally planned to kill himself elsewhere and apologized for messing up the park. He mentioned that he would have a peanut butter sandwich for his last meal and afterwards he would go to sleep. But he would never confess to any of the murders, even though there was more than enough evidence to convict him. And the videotapes that were spotted the previous evening by the trooper were not in the car and have never been found. And it's believed that he disposed of them in the river before committing suicide. And his body was found 8 days after his death.
Jesus.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to talk about the new owners of the farm.
Zero happy ending.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the new owners of the property, really, because I think they should just have privacy, and I don't like that it's mentioned in the article. But I will say that apparently they are still finding bones out there.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And that's not all. Joshua, I feel like you know more about the I-70 stuff in regards to Herb than I do. Do you want to talk about?
I mean, the only thing is, there's no way for us to know for sure. So we have to keep in mind that this, I mean, it's likely, but it is still speculation. But it is speculated that he is also the I-70 killer because of the demographic of the men that were killed. They were younger, they were sex workers, they were white. A lot of them were described as pretty boys, and they were all killed with strangulation, essentially. And those were I don't know, how much did they say? In the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Well within the 150 trips that he took down that highway.
And that's and one of the worst parts of this, and it's not just people dying, it's the lack of care that the police had about it and the way the media would react to it afterwards. They would refer to Herb Baumeister as this...
a businessman and a landowner, a family man, and they would refer to the victims as homosexuals and male prostitutes.
That's fun.
Yeah. Also, we have no idea if he is the Ohio state killer or if there is just, a coincidence there. But there have been victims in Ohio during that time period that also fit the description and were killed
in a strangulation method.
That's so
So
sad.
we don't know if that was also him, like maybe staying the night or what have you.
And we also, can I just say this? Like we want, I think we would love to send condolences and love and peace to all the families of the victims, not just for Herb's victims,
Absolutely.
but Bruce McArthur's victims. I don't like. It's like
All of the
extra
ones that we
sad.
know about, all of the ones that we don't know about, like
Yeah.
just to send a bunch of like really solid like love and positivity and just like we are so sorry for you.
Yeah.
And like I know that there's nothing that we can say to like bring them justice, but like we do feel like these stories are important to be talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like part of the reason, I'm going to be honest, part of the reason why I was hesitant to do true crime for a long time on this podcast is because a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of crime podcasts just feel either too callous or too focused on the grisly details of what these killers did and shit. And I
Yeah.
just, and they also talk about like mainly the big ones like, Dahmer and Gacy and shit like that. And I just wanted to bring attention to like somebody that's more unknown because it does affect our community, like the LGBT community. And I feel like a lot of times when people like us are murdered, it's not widely covered and there doesn't seem to be a lot of care and shit.
And usually when it is covered, it's because it's like a carnival freak show aspect to it,
Yeah.
which, just further satirizes the deaths of the victims, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I speak for all of us when I say, like, going forward, if we do continue talking about true crime, which I think we will, I think it's pretty, like, I think I can say this pretty comfortably when I say, like, we're going to be focused on, like, queer stories, because I don't think that enough people talk about our lives and our death.
I do also want to talk about a lot of, not just queer stories, but like, yeah, a main focus on that because that is our community. But I do want to talk about like Native stories and just stories about people of color because their cases aren't
Absolutely.
covered a lot either. Like look at the Highway of Tears,
Yeah.
just like and sex workers being murdered. Like I think I do want to touch on that stuff too because I feel like whenever it is covered, it's fetishized and satirized and turned into this whole like gross thing, like you said, circus shit. So just while I do want to focus on queer stuff mainly, we are going to
Like,
be
I
talking
mean,
about
like, let's be
cases.
honest, the only reason we talk about John Wayne Gacy, well, the only reason that that case is so famous is because of the dressing up like a clown.
Yeah,
Like the reason the Jeffrey Dahmer case is so huge is because of the, genital mutilation and lobotomy and
trying to turn people
brain
into zombies.
eating and like that's why they're well known
Yeah.
because they're, the most erroneous.
And that's not to say that those cases shouldn't have been covered or shouldn't be covered, but we
Yeah,
just personally want to cover semi-lesser known cases related to our community and other marginalized communities.
absolutely.
But
So
yeah.
anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. This is our
It was a
first
little
time doing
extra
it.
macabre.
Yeah, and like I know like it's kind of like we're in a serious moment and everything, but I found it ironic that when I first brought it up to you guys as an idea, you're just like, "Oh my god, it's gay." Oh wait, guys, we have another one. Oh my god, it's gay too.
Yeah, they were their
Coincidence
motives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Joshua's first official episode as a member of Macabre.
Yeah. Well, and because I do think that it's important that we remember our history as queer people.
Yeah.
And that includes the scary history and the unpleasant history and the uncomfortable history because I mean, the one thing that you can say about history is if we're not informed about it and its impact and the consequences of those things, then like we are doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna be talking about some shit.
Yes, we are.
All right. Well, we wish you a spooky 2 weeks, and we will be back with another episode, telling you more about, weird stuff and gay stuff. We love you.
So adios, guys. Bye.
Bye.